The EU has been humiliated by former US President Barack Obama, who brutally sums up the bloc's unresolved contradictions in his new book. The EU is going through arguably its greatest crisis of confidence. Regardless of the current state of Brexit talks, Britain's move to leave the bloc manifests itself as an unprecedentedly poor indictment of the Brussels project. Throw in the fallout regarding the EU's coronavirus recovery fund, and subsequent infighting between member states, the future looks bleak at best. To make matters worse, Mr. Obama, still one of the most influential voices in global politics, has twisted the knife with a damning assessment. Mr. Obama writes that the Greek debt crisis in the wake of the 2008 financial crash exposed the unresolved contradictions at the heart of Europe's decades-long march towards greater integration. He explains, "For me, the whole thing felt like a TV rerun of the debates we'd had back home in the aftermath of the Wall Street crisis. And while I was crystal clear about what European leaders like German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President Nicolas Sarkozy needed to do, I had sympathy for the political bind they were in. After all, I'd had a hell of a time trying to convince American voters it made sense to spend billions of taxpayer dollars bailing out banks and helping strangers avoid foreclosure or job losses inside our own country." Mrs. Merkel and Mr. Sarkozy, on the other hand, were being asked to persuade their voters that it made sense to bail out a bunch of foreigners. I realized then the Greek debt crisis was as much a geopolitical problem as it was a problem of global finance. Mr. Obama is largely referring to the events of 2009 as the Greek economy collapsed due to the impact of the global recession combined with structural economic weaknesses. To make matters worse, political leaders in Athens had no way out, as being a member of the Eurozone gave the country no monetary policy flexibility. The impact across the Eurozone was seismic, and the lack of confidence in the Greek economy led to the rising cost of risk insurance on credit default swaps, particularly in Germany. Greece required bailouts in 2010, 2012 and 2015 from the International Monetary Fund, Eurogroup and the European Central Bank. As Mr. Obama alludes to in his memoir, A Promised Land, the domestic fallout of the Greek bailouts in Mr. Sarkozy's France and Mrs. Merkel's Germany was enormous. Confidence in the Eurozone shattered, and the scars are there for all to see even today, not least in the recent crisis regarding the EU's coronavirus recovery fund, where member states clashed over how generous the fiscal package should be. Mr. Obama, US President from 2008 to 2016, is clearly all too aware of the EU's contradictions, but he is also sympathetic to the principles behind the European cause. He continues, "In those heady days after the fall of the Berlin Wall, in the years of methodical restructuring that followed the project's grand architecture, the common market, the euro, the European Parliament and a Brussels-based bureaucracy empowered to set policy on a wide range of regulatory issues, the EU expressed an optimism in the possibilities of a truly unified continent purged of the toxic nationalism that had spurned centuries of bloody conflict. To a remarkable degree, the experiment had worked. In exchange for giving up some elements of their sovereignty, the EU's member states had enjoyed a measure of peace and widespread prosperity perhaps unmatched by any collection of people in human history." He then claims national identities are stubborn things, which arguably alludes to Britain's departure from the bloc and could also be applied to the current row over Hungary and Poland's membership. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban is a particular thorn in the side for the Brussels machine. He said in September, "Britain's exit and the fact that everyone is still alive in the country shows that there is life outside of the EU.